Thank you everyone for joining. I can see people piling in on the LinkedIn Live, and you are in for a good show. We will do just a few introductions in a moment, but before we do that, really wanted to just frame the discussion, and really excited to have two organizations that operate in markets where there are additional regulations, there are additional things to consider when they are looking to hire people. And in this world of an overinflated volume of candidates driven by us continually removing friction in the process, by one-click apply, by candidates leveraging generative AI, by a more buoyant labor market, it is creating this surge of applications. But how do we ensure as employers we're continuing to reach the right people, which might mean the extra kind of regulatory processes which we need to go through, visa processes, those types of things, but also how do we continue to engage with passive audiences? How do we think about brand messaging? Where should we be distributing brand messaging? And a whole host more, and two wonderful guests to join us on that journey. So we'll get an intro into you, your background. Celinda, we'll come to you first.
Perfect. Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Celinda Appleby. I am a director at Visa. I sit on the employee experience team, currently looking after our refresh of our employee value proposition and looking at it from a different lens this time around. It's not my first EVP rodeo, but looking at it from a lens of how is it a lived experience? So embedding it into the employee end-to-end journey, all the way from attraction, which we're talking about today, to alumni networks at the end. I have been a recruiter, a sourcer. I worked at some great companies, and I've just had my 7-year anniversary at Visa. So excited to be here with all of y'all today.
There we go. And do you know what? I wonder whether this is one of those things that's just like folklore stuck in my head, or whether there's scientific basis. But, you know, fact checkers, get me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure your body regenerates, every cell in its body every 7 years is the cycle. So you've been through one cycle at
That's what
Visa.
the
So
moon.
here's the
I think
next
about
one.
it from like the moons and astrology, and we just have we just closed a cycle, so starting a new one. And
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Zach Ahmed. Really excited to be here. I can't see any of you guys. I'm sure you can see me, but yeah, really happy to be here. So I'm the talent attraction manager for Leonardo across the UK. Similar to Celinda, I've been in recruitment for more years than I can remember. Started out in agency, then went internal, then went into management, had my own business. So I think I've had quite a fair share of regenerative cycles. To be to be fair, and here I am to talk about our experiences with AI and candidates and the whole recruitment piece. So hopefully you guys will find it quite interesting and be able to take some stuff away.
Yeah, fantastic. That's the aim of the game. And maybe this is the new way that we start talking about when we're getting a bit, longer into our careers. We just start saying, "Hey, I'm sort of 3 regenerative cycles in." That's like the time I've been doing this for. So let's kick it off. And I really want to come to, I think, just first and foremost, maybe some of the nuances, maybe some of the challenges that you face working in more regulated industries. Kick it open, Zach. You're off mute, so let's kick it over to you first. Like some of those challenges, like first and foremost, just to give the audience some context of maybe it's not quite as straightforward as other areas.
No, it's not. So those that know of Leonardo, obviously working within the defense sector, especially here in the UK, most of our stuff is working with the UK government, UK military, Navy, Air Force, whatever it is. So it's always going to be a highly regulated industry, and especially as we're on the product side. What we can recruit in terms of personnel, in terms of background, in terms of nationality, it's really rigid. And going outside of that, obviously, we'd probably be out of business and be tangled up in lawsuits up to our eyeballs. So it is a very regulated industry, and also the skill sets that we generally go after within engineering is already pretty niche and quite high end. And then you stick restrictions on top of that in terms of people's work status. Some of the stuff that we work on is classified, is quite top secret as well. So we are very restricted in what we can actually recruit. So partnering with people that have AI knowledge, like hackajob being one of them, and several of our other partners, really, really helps us to unlock some of those pools of talents that we otherwise probably wouldn't be able to access. So yeah, we are in a very regulated industry, and I'm sure Celinda would probably say the same as well. Probably not as extreme as ours when it comes to restrictions, but restrictions nonetheless in an already very challenging skills market.
I was going to say Visa operates in 200 plus countries and territories across the world with very different regulations and laws. And, we have experts in our TA team that have to process that and manage that, end to end from attraction all the way to offer. So it is a little different. I came from Nike where that was not a thing for us. To look back at the Nike days, it was a little, obviously there's challenges of skill sets and, the high tech of the nature of the work we did there, but different industry, so much different. So while we do have some government work as well, we're definitely not as regulated there, but every country, every territory has a different way of looking at it, which adds the complexity.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I was watching British American Tobacco earlier on in the week talking about their brand messaging, right? Again, a really difficult brand from a completely different set. Like there's not necessarily the challenges with regulation or multi-territory or the different kind of laws that they need to work towards, but there is that brand challenge of actually thinking about how you position yourselves in a market where it's really, really challenging. And I think that's where it's always interesting thinking about how you reach folks and how and where you show up, why that's so different in maybe some of the more challenging areas versus Nike, which naturally comes with its challenges, but comes with a lot of benefits as well, because your brand's on every single street in the world, and usually in quite a positive way. So, yeah, I'd love to kind of hear about some of the channels, some of the ways you're thinking about messaging. And Celinda, you're going through this at the moment. You're going through like a refresh and you're thinking about how you integrate it in. Would love to kind of dive into that in more detail.
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you're starting this journey or in the middle of this journey, I would suggest doing research and really tapping into your current employees, the people who have left your company, and of course your prospective people, your prospective talent pools. And why we would do that, and I know everyone says this is what you do, but in theory, sometimes it's one of the hardest things to pull off. It's because every territory, every country, every way, humans are different, so, and your brand is consumed in a different way no matter where you are. Some people know Visa very well, some people don't, and they may know us as a credit card company. They may not know all the cool tech and the innovations that we're leading and what it takes to come here. And so when we're thinking about the brand messaging, where I've seen companies fail before is you develop this one size fits all mentality. That's I think a big lever of how you create this pool of all these people are coming to you. When I was doing the research, you will be surprised that I found like at least 500 companies. I used AI to do this, thanks ChatGPT, that use the word impact in their EVP statement or their career site tagline. And we can't all be making an impact the same way, And so if you're all saying the same thing, you're becoming this aspirational company where people are like, oh, it's so easy to get a job there, regardless of whether your skills line up. And so you have to be very cognizant of this one size fits all mentality and get really into the breadth. And I think the research is helpful there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely echo that as well. I mean, we're right at the beginning of our storytelling journey, if you like. I mean, how we try to reach different candidates in different areas within the UK was always a little bit fragmented. It was more guesswork. It was more opinion. People up north in Edinburgh will see certain things about Leonardo, where somebody down south will see something totally different. But hey, we're the same company, and we're looking for almost the same thing, just in different geographies, but we're all telling different stories. So we've actually put a lot of time and effort into developing our EVP, developing our story. What is it that Leonardo is about? What kind of things is it that will speak to people that wanted to move into this industry or already in this industry? And we're right at the beginning of that. We even used we implemented Glint not too long ago. I think it's called Viva Glint now. Got taken over by Microsoft. They're taking over everything. But so we use that as a kind of like a temperature check in terms of how our own employees that we've already hired, what their thoughts are, what we can improve, and then going externally to see what the temperature is like to people that see our message. I mean, we've already seen some amazing results, like in Glassdoor, top 50 company, in LinkedIn, we're in top 20 companies to kind of work for as well. So it's definitely working. And like I said, we're still at the beginning of that journey. So I'm really kind of engaged and involved in how that kind of pans out. Because I think with recruitment, and I think a lot of people on here, I mean, I don't know what your backgrounds are, if you are in recruitment or if you're on the business side of it, if you're on the recruitment side of it. Storytelling is quite a key component of how you actually, reach to those candidates, and also, on what platform they're actually accessing that story as well also matters. So yeah, it's a very exciting time for us here at Leonardo, and hopefully we can get some consistency in our message so people up north don't think that we're a hotel chain and people down south we're something else.
And just on that last point, actually, you touched on something there. It's like where you show up. And I think that's increasingly important, right? We're in this like constant battle for attention. And if we thought it was crazy, a while ago with like 10 seconds and people scrolling through, we're not just dealing with human creators now, right? We're dealing with human creators on steroids, and there is so much information. So I'd love to kind of go on that journey of like where we're showing up with these stories, where we're showing up with this content, and like what people should think about in terms of, I suppose, channels, but it's more than channels now, right?
Yeah, agreed. I wanted to, on the same note, not to dismiss your question, but I love the storytelling angle, and I think everybody should be a storyteller. I think it's everyone's job to recruit, regardless of your role, your title, or whether you are a recruiter. And you do that by arming your employees with the ease and the comfort, especially when you're in a regulated industry, to feel proud and have a story to tell, right? Because I think sometimes EVP is a tagline, and we let it go. And you should always be at the beginning of your journey. I think we should stop this every 2 years, start and stop. And so anyways, just wanted that I love the whole storytelling angle on that. But channels are, in my opinion, extremely important now. I had a conversation the other day with a colleague, and it was like, our job board's dead. And I don't think they will be, because we have to think about, we have 5 generations in the workplace, and some people are going to always do what they do. And so they're always going to go to the Indeeds, the LinkedIns, and that's just how they are, right? That's just nature. So that'll never go away, in my opinion. Or if you have a niche board, I used to recruit in the defense industry for the States, and we had these like cleared job network. I don't know if they're still around or not, but that's where they went, and they'll always go there. But we have to think about Gen Z and Gen Alpha's like knocking at our door, and they grew up on TikTok, they grew up on Snapchat, they grew up on these YouTube. And so you have to start thinking about those places. And I'm not telling anyone to go spend money on it, but it should be on your radar. And you do need to be in niche boards. I've met Sam last year at Breakfast in Nashville, got an opportunity to see the platform and really love what you were doing for the technology industry. And that is where if you want to be where the techs are, and you can ask your engineers, where do you hang out? Where are you consuming your information? One thing I loved about Nike is we were advertising at Bloomberg. We were advertising where people, it wasn't necessarily like, hey, you've been in sneakers, so we're going to only advertise in sneakernews.com. We were advertising where people consume their news, or they were in their day to day.
And I think on that point, actually, we're seeing, I saw this great piece from LinkedIn about the kind of demographics that are actually joining LinkedIn as a platform now. And it's kind of bucking that trend where maybe the last 2 generations, and I hate the generation like grouping as a whole, but it is a really useful, useful barometer. And we're actually seeing a different trend now of like younger generations increasingly using LinkedIn as a channel because it's got a purpose. It's got a drive of what you need to do. And I think that was the bit which you touched on there, which actually dovetails back to that research piece of like, where do the people that you already work, maybe it's where they engage with work, maybe it's engage with jobs, but actually, Dara has said it better than I in the comments just now, so I'll throw it up there. Meet the people where they're at. So that's there. And let's go, Zach, where are you? Because obviously, like, you can't be quite as open and as
No,
visible
we
as some of
can't.
the stuff that you're
I would,
doing.
oh,
Yeah.
I would love to have Nike plastered over, you know,
It's easy. It was
yeah, yeah,
looking
yeah,
back,
yeah.
it was an easy time, Zach.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, the dynamics are a lot different. But I think what's really been important, I mean, certainly with my time here and some of the awesome people that we're working with at Leonardo, they understand their audience. A lot of those might be veterans, ex-veterans, people coming out of the army or people coming out of the military, the RAF, whatever it is, where they hang out, what kind of shows they go to, what kind of events they go to. So a lot of our outreach stuff does revolve around kind of road shows and networking events and you know, where people go to have a look at new products, new items and stuff like that. So a lot of it is spent on the road, but also we have seen um, online channels starting to grow within this particular area, probably for the last 2-3 years now. So one of the initiatives that we took was to, because a lot of the people that work for us are all ex-servicemen, right, or ex-military people or people that come from a military background. Where they go to hang out, I think, is a really, really good question that probably previously was just mentioned, but there wasn't really any emphasis on there. But once we actually started to do some real research and feedback on where people are hanging out, where do they go, what kind of shows do they go to, what kind of magazines do they subscribe to, what kind of newsletters they're subscribing to, it just starts to open up channels that you probably weren't aware of before. So whatever your method of advertising is, you know, whether it's through your own career site, whether it's, you know, through partners like hackajob, Indeed, or whatever it is, you can at least give some rich information as to, look, this is where our people are hanging out. This is where people are going. Let's try and target them. And how do we target them? What platforms do we use to target them? So I think, you know, understanding channels and there's no exact science, right? You might think, hey, you know what? Everybody's going to this event. Let's go and do that. But they might be meeting there for something totally different to what you're trying to get them for. So understanding the channels, the audience, and what kind of message would befit that particular event or moment, I think is also quite important. But thankfully now there are, you know, quite a few platforms out there, channels out there, methods out there to be able to get your message there, again, in a succinct and a storytelling fashion that makes sense, and is appealing to people. So yeah, I think looking at different channels is a key, especially within this particular market. You're right, people's behaviors are probably changing, but those that have always been using job boards, etc., are always going to probably continue to use that just out of habit. So it's not to dismiss that at all. I think you'd be missing a huge trick if you did dismiss that. Uh, um, but also, you know, really looking at other channels to kind of enhance your message and get to those few people that you probably otherwise wouldn't get to.
I agree.
And it's that mix, right? I think it's the mix of
Yeah,
everything that
it
comes
is.
together. There was like one continuous thread though throughout all of that, and it was like irregardless of the channel, whether it's a media that's specific for jobs, whether it's an event, whether it's a kind of social channel that you're leveraging, that the root to all of those things from what I was hearing was all around actually like networks. And I think this is
Mm.
going to become increasingly important, right? I've spent the last 2 weeks at events and I've made much better connections at those events than I could possibly make online. And not everything needs to be in person for you to be able to get that. So let's like go into that piece, like more detail rather than like, I suppose, getting a litmus test of which markets and which channels you want to use. What about alumni, referrals, ambassadorships? What should people think about there? What's been your experience?
So I think, like, looking at it from a candidate lens, I wanted to say something really funny when you said people like the youth is joining LinkedIn. My son joined LinkedIn last Sunday, and I got an alert like, you may know Corey Appleby. What? So, and he's like, yeah, I just wanted to check it out. So they
Reject.
really are.
Genuinely are. You genuinely are.
I know him. Okay. I think from a candidate lens or a job seeker lens, whether, here, you're here today looking for a role, you really need to embed yourself in what that company is doing. And hopefully most companies, whether Leonardo or Visa or X company, we're posting what we are, where we are, who we are online. And I think it behooves the candidate or the job seeker to go out and find those notes, right? To, if you're interested in product, find a product manager and talk to them. I think nowadays in this world, we are oversaturated with messages. And I think if you craft a really good one and you get in touch, referrals are a very big thing, and if you can find an employee that'll do that. That's why I think if we cultivate a culture of brand ambassadorship in general, and you treat every employee as a recruiter, like I always say, everyone at Visa is a recruiter, and you arm them with that information. And I guess that we're very beginning journey, so there's a long way to go there. But if you cultivate that culture, then your recruiting team will just have to make those connections to make the matchmaking, because we're filling their funnel with the right people, because those engineers are talking to each other at a networking event. Those engineers are online together. And I also wanted to just give a tip, because I'd like to make these things actionable, especially for the people joining at 7 a.m. You don't have to wait for your brand your brand person like myself to help you. Every intake call you are with your hiring manager, ask them, where do you hang out? And if we pull it back to the storytelling, hey, can I talk to 2 people on your team that are doing the job now? I want to embed a couple of quotes into the job description. I think, we weren't talking about job descriptions, but a way to repel the masses in this era of a lot of candidates is ensuring your job descriptions is exactly who you're looking for. And by putting in quotes from from employees on that team, or a video, I'm making it simple, but if you have budget for video and all of the bells and whistles, do that. But look at the words you're using, because that is how you're going to attract the right person for that team. Because in addition to attracting people for the company, you're as a recruiter, your second layer, or as a brand leader, is to make sure you're attracting the right person for that team. Because Sam, you could be great for me, and then we could be different. Maybe I don't work well with Zach, right? It all depends on the team. I'm not saying this is all a lie, but you know what I mean? Like, this is one human. Okay, Zach is the one that I'm going to work with. I think Zach. But you know what I mean? Like, it's making those connections, because that human being could work on other teams. So every team dynamic is different too.
Yeah, and I really love the idea of brand ambassadorship, especially for employees, that every employee should be a recruiter for that company. And I really, really love that idea. I mean, last year we recruited probably more than 150 people just based on, I know that's not a huge number per se, but for us, for Leonardo, who's still trying to find their feet, find their positioning within the market, find their messaging and their storytelling within the market, I think we've done really, really well from our brand ambassadorship programs that we have, and recruiting over 150 people is amazing. And I think this year we're probably going to increase that by 25 to maybe 27%. So it is still growing, right? And I really, really love the idea. I think everybody within the company, should have a recruiter hat on. Who else do I know that might be good for this company? And just spreading that message, and you'll be surprised. One person brings one person, another person brings 2 person. The next thing you know, they've done half your job for you, all right? And some companies which will actually reward you for those referrals, right, in one way or another, whether it be monetary, whether it might be they might have some other compensation scheme, or some way of recognizing that contribution. And I think it's a really, really powerful way to tell your story. And there's no one way to tick all your recruitment needs, especially when you're in such a competitive market. And like I said, I mean, I don't know who else is on the call, but some of you might be in quite an easy market to recruit for, where you can just put out an ad and you'll get 300-400 people apply, for example. In other words, you might get 300-400 people, but maybe only one of those is right. Right, but that's probably later on in the conversation. Okay, how do we sift that out and make sure that we see the person that we want? But there's no one thing. If it makes sense, to your company, obviously budget will play a part in this as well. Like Celinda said, if you want to go videos, apples and whistles, green screen, CGI, Star Wars effects, that. Go for it. More power to you. Yeah.
You don't need to anymore. You don't need to. It's free to do this now. Because whether it passes your brand team, but
tell you,
and I think
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
tell
think
your
just go on,
yeah,
go.
that's what I was gonna say. Tell your story how you want to tell it and how you can tell it. There's no one way. And if one way doesn't work, let's try a different way. If just because something works for your competitor and you think, hey, you know what they're doing it, so I'm gonna do it. But then you do it and you think, hey, why are we not getting that response? But it doesn't matter. You've tried it, it hasn't worked right. Let's try something else.
Correct.
Repositioning, always reevaluating, always seeing. And I think in the back end, having good reporting tools to be able to see what impact it is having or
True.
not having,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
and then make business decisions from that. So along with AI, I think data is absolutely key
Yeah.
in how you maneuver yourself within the market. So
And I'd love to come to all the KPIs that we think matter now in brand because I think they've changed. But I'm mindful that's probably another episode in itself. I think Celinda, that little soundbite of just getting quotes from people that already work within the team, that costs absolutely nothing
Nothing.
whilst you're
yeah.
in that process. There was another great company years ago, and the top referrer in the company used to have their parking space moved next door to the CEO. Now, not everybody goes back 5 days a week, but there's plenty of brands that do.
Yeah.
But it was that internal recognition of like, you're contributing to this business. This was their chance of like progressing their career. There was another one that had a Harley
100%.
Davidson in the lobby, and it
Oh,
was,
I
you know,
heard about that. Yeah.
and you get the Harley Davidson. Not everybody's into it, but it's a cool thing to get. And it was just one prize rather than lots of other things. So I think like
Little
that
things. Yeah. I love
referral
that.
network's key. I think Zara coming in again, captured this conversation and throwing this up. And I think it is bigger than a single company page. It is
100%.
bigger than that. And like beyond those networks, and also some of the places where you're then trying to reach folks. We touched on some of those kind of niche areas before, but actually those channels become important, whether that's a community, whether that's an online group, etc. I wanted to leave some space for audience questions. So, folks, if you want to try to pile in, and whilst we wait for any of those, talk to me about metrics, because I think that was a great point, Zach, that you raised at the end in terms of like, we need to look at the data, we need to have that follow through and make sure the channels are working. Celinda, when you're thinking about this, like next refresh, what are now the metrics that matter in brand? Because I feel they've changed, right?
I'm going to be honest with you. So one of my OKRs for this year, we just started our fiscal year 23 days ago, is to come up with a dashboard or a reporting mechanism on what that is. And what I'll tell you what it's not is like, in my opinion, is managing that Glassdoor rating. I do think we track it because there's a baseline, but it's one of those things where Glassdoor is a little difficult, in my opinion. It's been like a thing. And also, I think it's not like likes, impression, shares anymore. You know what I mean? Because it's so easy to buy bots to make you look really good for a very low price. But do I have the answer? No. In fact, if anyone
Was that another top tip, by the way? And there you go. You can buy bots to make yourself look great. No, but that metric doesn't matter.
No, I just don't think it does. But if anyone's listening and you have a course or a class on employer brand metrics in the age of AI, I'm very interested. It's one of my things. I'm going to learn, and I can come back and share everything I learn. But yeah, TBD.
I like that we know what it's not, though. We know what it's not. I will definitely bring you back once you've articulated what it is, because it's hard now, right? It's not
so hard.
Impressions, it's not views, it's not conversions to applications.
No.
For sure.
Or application volume anymore, because we used to be like, oh, our talent attraction strategy is working because we increased application volume by 30%. And nobody wants that anymore,
No.
In fact, I think I have that on my LinkedIn that we did at Nike, like we increased application volume as a positive.
And it was at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, metrics are just exactly what I mean. I'm personally, I'm not a huge fan of KPI, especially like in my own team when I'm managing my own team members. Numbers are just numbers, but I'm more interested in the narrative around it. So even when we're trying to set KPIs, when we're doing adverts, you might say, hey, this today, we've had, over 10,000 impressions on this particular page, but we've only had, probably 10% of that turn into applications or click-throughs or whatever it is, right? But then you look at the click-throughs that have actually come through, how many of them have actually gone to interview, how many of them gone to an offer stage, or et cetera, et cetera. And then you just see, well, is it because of the advert itself? Is it because it was that it's that time of the season where people are actually looking? Is it because people are on holiday now? That's why we're not getting those click-throughs, or the quality of candidates. So there's so many things that can affect it. So I mean, metrics are good, but I don't think, and I'm sure many people will probably agree, taking them in isolation is probably more to your detriment than anything else. Yeah. So having different data sources and other things that can give you a more holistic picture as to what's going on is probably more of a sensible way to look at it, as opposed to, hey, this advert, Mr. Hiring Manager, that you pull out has got absolutely zero traction. What's going on there? Right. You see what I mean? So yeah, just taking it in isolation, I think, could be to your detriment. But everybody reads things differently. My approach
Yeah.
is always looking at it more holistically, find out what else is happening in real life, as opposed to just online and how many click-throughs you're getting. It doesn't always tell you the full picture.
That's why I think of dashboard. I don't know. In my brain, I see this like really pretty dashboard with a bunch of, see, oh, if you're doing a job well, not everything is going to be green, right? Because you have to be consistently bettering yourself, working on other things. And so I'm very cognizant of when people report data and it's all amazing. And it's like, okay, that's your interpretation of that, because you should have some yellows, you should have some reds. I'm thinking that traffic light, there should be things that aren't working and that you can better your strategy over time.
Yeah,
100%.
and like it's all around business value at the end. And a few years ago, business value was making sure that you got more eyes on your brand than your competitors in a market where it was difficult to get applications. And that was the goal. Like, can we get more applications? And then that pulled through. Now applications is a real challenge, right? You don't want applications necessarily for positions. You're trying to be more creative. You're trying to be more targeted. And it all boils down to like what channels are actually working. Is our message actually landing with the right folks? And I think there's been some great quotes coming in. I'll fly one up there. The candidate journey's a bowl of spaghetti. And it kind of touched on loads of those other pieces which we were talking about. Like, does it even matter? Can you get a realistic preview of what the impact is to your business? What's the true business value? I think one question is probably what we've got time for, and there are a couple, but I'll just throw this one in and go through hundreds of profiles and go through that challenge. This is more operational. Zach, let's come to you on like for you and your teams. What are the channels that work for you, I suppose, to stop this problem in the first instance, and then maybe when you've got
I mean, we've had to employ quite a few different tools, and I think it is picking the right AI tools to be able to help. Not necessarily, or even if you were to take the word AI out of it, I think having the right tools in place that help your TAs or help the people that are in positions where they are having to look at CVs on a daily basis, where they can actually automate unnecessary tasks. Like, for example, that question where you've got 100 CVs, if you've got a tool that would be able to, closely match as it possibly can. And this is probably when we start talking about AI. I mean, before that, when I first joined Leonardo back in 2000, it was all manual. I had to look through every single CV myself. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So, having the right AI tools, because we've got a company-wide CRM that tends to help us kind of filter that as well. Also, people like hackajob who also help us with that filtration process as well, especially with those really, really difficult to find candidates. I mean, we've done a number of different stuff with them, as well as some of our other partners as well. But, I think we've grown together with hackajob a little bit in terms of where their platform was in the beginning to what it's actually offering us now. And we were able to directly influence that when it comes to sifting through CVs and only presenting candidates that would be of use to us. And as I mentioned quite early on, restrictions in terms of who we can actually hire because of the industry that we're in, we're already at a disadvantage to somebody else that's not in the same industry as us, and they tend to be able to just hoover up these candidates and take them for themselves, right? But we need to having a way to get to those candidates really, really quickly, and I think that's where AI will either make you or break you. and choosing the right AI that fits what it is that you're trying to do. So sifting through hundreds, I mean, we're sifting through thousands of CVs, but now we've got a scoring system that actually really, really works, and a scoring system that you can actually directly influence. So you contribute towards the AI to say, okay, for this particular role, these are the types of candidates that I want. You can even upload ideal candidates into that portal. So it recognizes the key features of those CVs that you'd be interested in. And you can also, put it in there manually or put in examples of CVs that you'd like. So the AI learns, and then it says, okay, based on the information that you've given us, these 10 candidates out of these 1,000 candidates would be an A score, B score, C score, D score. And it allows us to really just get to those candidates really, really quickly, and process them accordingly. So yeah, so for me, I don't know whether that answers that question directly.
Yeah, I think so.
There, so apologies for that.
No, it's like three-pronged, right? It's three-pronged. It's like you've got your initial challenge at the top, and the channels which you're feeding it, and if one of them's feeding the slop that's not working, it's creating that problem. It's then like being focused with the solutions you're using, and then the final piece of like, actually, once you've got the candidates there, it's still probably too many to process. So how do you go through that? And there are a couple more questions. Celinda, any closing thoughts on that last one from your side? Because I'm very mindful. You've got to go and visit a college.
I'm totally good. I'm totally good. Don't ask me about sifting through CVs, because the last time I did that, I would just turn on music and spend my entire Sunday going through manually. So I have been out of the recruiting world before all these technologies came in. So I don't have any fun tips for you, but I do love what Zach said. So +1 to all of that.
+1. And also but it starts at the beginning of the journey. And I think this is what this whole framing was about. And to kind of close things out and wrap things up, a lot of what we've been speaking about has actually been leveraging your internal networks, leveraging their extended networks, looking at your alumni, looking about where you show up as a brand consistently to make sure you're reaching the right people. And it's no longer as many eyes from as many channels as you can get. It's the right eyes in the right places that funnel through to actual results that delivers business impact without creating an unnecessary strain in your recruitment team. And the kind of metrics and the measures of what worked a few years ago have now, kind of changed and shifted. So, massive thank you for both of you for joining. Thank you for everyone and like staying super engaged throughout. And thank you both.